Hi everyone, welcome to Wild Earth Ways. I'm Kat, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you all of my Oracle deck collection. So I will introduce the decks briefly and talk about why I value them and a little bit about how I use them. So a few weeks ago I shared the video of my tarot collection, so all my tarot decks. So this is a follow-up to that, but in that video I divided the decks into groups, but I'm not going to do that with the Oracle decks because they kind of all follow a similar-ish theme, I think. Not exactly, but they are mostly connected with nature and the earth. So instead of dividing them up into themes, I'm going to talk about them roughly in the order that I got them. So starting with my first Oracle deck up until my latest one. So the first Oracle deck I ever got was this one, The Wild Unknown Animal Spirit by Kim Kranz. And I got this at the same time as the Wild Unknown Tarot deck. Until then I'd spent years only with tarot, and I didn't really know about Oracle cards at all. But when I got the Wild Unknown deck, I decided to get this one because animals are very important to me. I felt that this would be an interesting deck to use and get to know. The deck is divided into 5 suits, like a tarot deck. And so I enjoy that about it. I think it makes it easy to understand and work with when you have the associations with each of the elements. So here, Firefly is associated with the suit of air, Lion with the suit of fire, or the element of fire, Tarantula also fire, also Panther, Otter with water. And you can see also in these images that the animal spirit deck is very balanced. So you have different kinds of energies in the animals. So obviously Panther, very different from Otter. And it gives you very different readings accordingly. So the guidebook is quite good. I find it useful to use this deck with the guidebook. It doesn't have keywords. So unless you have personally strong associations with Otter or Scorpion, which you may well do at this point, I do, so it's not necessary always to use the guidebook. But the guidebook is very well written, and it tends to give interpretations which are relevant to humans' psychology, rather than necessarily connecting you with the animal's experience of the world, if that makes sense. So I do feel actually that the title, Animal Spirit, is quite appropriate to this deck, in the sense that the animals are really representing different aspects of human experience and ideas connected with psychology and spirituality. It reads quite well. Like I said, it has a balance within it. Here we can see whale connected with water, and this is the 5th element, which is spirit, represented by the circle. And the animals or beings represented in this suit are not ones you're going to find in real ecosystems, so they're somewhat fantastical. Here we have black egg, so it has a symbolic meaning rather than an actual place in Earth's ecosystems. And I think that that's kind of typical of this deck. So just bear that in mind, that it's more one for exploring spiritual ideas and psychology rather than the animals themselves. Now, of course, we humans are also animals. So for me, when I'm thinking with or about other animals, I certainly think about them as relations to us humans on a cellular level through our evolutionary history. And so I do think that animals are very useful to think with, and they can all bring up all different kinds of understanding about the world that we live in today, because the animals have evolved in different ways from us to have different experiences of the world. And I'm going to talk more about animals in my practice and thinking in a different video. So this is the Wild Unknown Animal Spirit by Kim Kranz. So the next deck I got was this one, Angels and Ancestors Oracle Cards by Kyle Gray with artwork by Lily Moses. I have to admit that when I chose this deck, I had the idea that because this deck is a bit of an all-rounder, as you'll see, it can be used in different ways, that it might be the only Oracle deck that I would need. It would kind of cover all the bases. And I didn't at that time know that there was so much variety out there in Oracle decks, talking about so many different topics and that can be used in very diverse ways. So as it turned out, it wasn't the only Oracle deck I needed, or at least it wasn't the only Oracle deck that I've bought. I was drawn to this deck really because of the artwork by Lily Moses. I think it's very beautiful. I also like the kind of the mood, the intention of the deck. I feel like it's very rooted in earth wisdom. So for example, in the bottom of the deck, you can see this intention. I set the intention that whatever is gained from the lessons learned from this tool will be dedicated to the growth of all beings in all places. I really like that intention, and I feel that it is seen in the artwork. I like the fact that there are different ages represented in the deck. So here we have Wise One, grow within your current situation, an older woman, which is great to see, more representation of age diversity. And I was also drawn to the fact that the deck represents a diverse ethnicities, different people from different backgrounds and experiences. It also has symbolic cards, so not just figures, guardians and humans, ancestors, but also it has seasons and other kind of symbols, like here, this is the sun. You can see that each one has a keyword and also a more expansive message below that. So sun, enjoy, success and happiness. And then there is also a write-up in the guidebook. I don't always use the guidebook, so I'm not completely sure. I don't remember exactly what those messages are like. I seem to remember that the messages were quite good, but not always exactly how I see the world, but it was not a problem for me. I like this image, Magic Guardian. So although the deck is called Angels and Ancestors, it doesn't actually say angels on the cards. Those cards are the guardian cards in the deck, like this one, Magic Guardian. You can see she has angel wings, but it doesn't label her as an angel here. Now, there has been some criticism of the deck for a couple of reasons. Some people don't like the fact that there are images in the deck of explicitly religious symbolism. So I think if people have troubled relationships, especially with Christianity, some of the cards can be uncomfortable for them for that reason. And the other criticism was questions about appropriation. So whether some of the cultures, the indigenous cultures represented in the deck, are done so in an appropriative way. And so for that reason, I have actually removed a few cards from the deck. I did remove a couple of the cards representing indigenous people where specific points have been made to suggest that that could be an inappropriate representation. So on the other hand, like I said, I did actually choose this deck partially because it is extremely diverse, and also because there are people represented who are Middle Eastern representing. So because I live in the Middle East, I live in Israel, and I like seeing people in the deck who are like the people who I love, people in my family, people who I'm surrounded by. Like this image here of Traveler. I really enjoy this image. I think this woman's warmth and openness comes over really beautifully. And also the fact that she's neither young nor old, but within that middle point of experience and still experiencing life. I relate quite strongly to this card. Having myself lived in 5 different countries, I feel quite a kinship with this woman, even if I don't actually look like her. I still feel like this is an energy that I understand. I like this card as well, Sage, be devoted and committed. I think the way that Lily Moses has drawn the faces is really beautiful. Like you see this yogi's kind of wisdom and kindness at the same time. It's really beautiful, such a lovely image. So actually, I don't often read with this card, this deck rather, by drawing cards. I'm more likely to pull out a card such as this one, Be Devoted and Committed, when I need to focus on a specific message or a specific energy. Like here we have Air Guardian, Shift Your Perception. And all of the elements are represented in this way with guardian figures. So that's actually something quite useful to use as a focus in meditation or in another reading, for example. Here's the Moon card. Here's Earth Mother. I love this card very much. The message is feel loved and comforted. And I do, again, think that Lily Moses's artwork has really captured a sense of this, of being held by the living earth, a kind of Gaia energy. It also makes me think of my own mother as well, who's far away from me, but I can sort of feel the energy of mother in this card, which I really like. Spirit Fox, we have a fox in the deck, which I always appreciate. So yeah, I could flip through it for longer. I actually realize that most people have seen this deck, in that it's a bit of a favorite on YouTube, although it isn't seen around as much these days as in the past. So this is the Angels and Ancestors Oracle deck by Kyle Gray and Lily Moses. I actually have some doubts about this term Oracle deck. I'm not super comfortable with it. It's what we say, so okay, I'll say that too. When I was young, I was one of those kids who was very interested in Greek mythology, and I was fascinated by the stories of the oracles, the Sibyl of Cumae and the Delphic oracle, and how they would give people these messages which are not clear and sometimes in fact harmful. And particularly they're interested in the way the Sibyl of Cumae would give these messages by writing them on leaves and then scattering the leaves. So you would have to put together the message as best you can. So I can see how oracle as a word connects with these decks of cards. At the same time, it feels to me very grand. So I'm not always super keen on this word oracle, because sometimes I want to use the decks for something a little bit less grand and mythic and potentially misleading in the way that the advice of the oracles so often could be in Greek mythology. The next deck I have is the Curious Messages of Enchantment, Forest Fae by Nadia Turner, which is a mini deck produced by Rockpool. There's no guidebook for this deck. The images are written, the images on the cards also have a little message. So you have the keyword, such as here, the old one, and then a message, the ancestors call, seek their wisdom. And we have these beautifully drawn images of different fae-like creatures. I think the artwork is just gorgeous. I love it. And it was the unusual artwork, the imaginative style of Nadia Turner's art that drew me to this deck. Here we can see the old paths, walk in unknown territory to see from a new perspective. And I love this woman who has like plants growing out of her green hair and kind of horns and animal ears. They're really wonderfully drawn and very evocative. Away we fly, take the cloud roads, delight in your imagination. I feel like that's what this deck is doing. It's really enjoying the imaginative process. The Fairy Harper, find the words to long forgotten songs and dance to the music in your soul. So you can see that the messages are very accessible, they're supportive, they're quite gentle. I use this deck to simply draw a card when I feel like having a message. I don't use it usually as part of a spread, not in a kind of part of any complex ritual, but simply to get a quick message and enjoy the wonderful artwork. Like here, the Sentinel, new opportunities shall manifest in unexpected ways. And here we have this kind of Sphinx creature with a human face. I really like these creatures in the deck, which kind of remind me of medieval marginalia. the kind of strange animals that you can sometimes find doodled in the margins of medieval manuscripts, where you often have kind of human-like faces on animals. So all in all, this is a very friendly and easy to use deck, which I really enjoy the artwork of by Nadia Turner, as well as the kind, supportive messages. So next up we have the Weaver's Oracle by Caroline Hillier. These cards represent really Caroline Hillier's life work. They are amazing paintings of different figures, different women, and I think that the cards were originally very large paintings, which she then has made available in this deck form. The artwork is stunning. It's really powerful, very sort of evocative and speaking. Each card has a keyword, a name like rock, and then a small expansion, Bonehill Hag, that it fits into a system that Caroline has used in her art. Shard, Shaman Weaver of the Tundra; Lichen, Shaman Weaver of the Wild Hills. But you can see that to interpret the cards, you're going to have a number of different options. So they don't have keywords that are telling you what is the meaning of this card. Instead, you could sit with the card and see intuitively what message it's bringing you. But I personally do heavily use the guidebook. So she has written a really wonderful guidebook. And for each card, there is a story telling the woman's tale, and then a interpretation of the different symbols in the story, and some wisdom that we might draw from the story. And she really, in these stories, connects up with the land in which the people are living, the ancestors, generations, wisdom and art, music, cloth weaving, different symbols from across the ages. It's very special. It's kind of its own world in many respects, and I have really enjoyed using the deck. I personally only pull a card usually around the time of the full moon and new moon, and just a single card then for the next sort of roughly 2 weeks or so. So some women I've met several times, like this one, Storm, Weathered Woman of the Dark Drum, and others I've never met. So although I've flipped through the whole deck, I haven't read the whole of the guidebook, and so I feel there's still a lot in there which I've yet to learn from, and I enjoy learning in this kind of slow way with the rhythms of the moon. So this is the Weaver's Oracle by Caroline Hillier. This is an independent deck. The previous decks were all mass market. This deck is available directly from the artist, who has a shop online. And my next deck is a complete change of pace from there. This is the Oracle of the Kitsune, or Kitsune, created by Lucy Cavendish and Meredith Dillman. I have the French version of this deck. The English version, I believe, is called Foxfire. I'm not completely sure if it's exactly the same. There are often differences between French and English decks. So this one comes in this little bag, and it has this red gilding. That's pretty common for French decks to have the kind of the bag and the gilding. I don't know that the English deck necessarily has that. So the artwork is not necessarily a style which I would normally be drawn to. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but possibly manga or cartoony. This deck represents different shapeshifters, different, especially kitsune, but not just, different fantastical creatures. It has a keyword and then a write-up in the guidebook, which is quite expansive. And I found that the messages are really well written and really have a lot of wisdom. So I actually bought this deck for sentimental reasons. I've spoken about it in another video, so I'll just briefly explain here that I used to live in Paris, and while I was living there, I wrote a novel, a young adult urban fantasy novel about kitsune shapeshifters living in Paris. And then some time ago when I was visiting Paris, I saw this deck and I bought it just for sentimental reasons. And since then, I've really got a lot of affection for this deck because I draw a card from it each time I start a new book to use as a bookmark. And I read quite a lot, so I probably read a book every week. So I guess I'm drawing a card from this deck fairly regularly. And then I really enjoy reading, so I associate the cards with reading, you know, with the experience of the book. And I do find that often the message is a really nice and interesting counterpoint to the book which I'm reading. So for me, I've like developed quite a lot of affection for this deck, which is a slightly unusual one in my collection. So this is the Oracle of the Kitsune or Kitsune. My next deck is another independently published deck. It's by Danielle Barlow, and I have it in the bag, which used to be the bag of the Witch's Wisdom, which I now have in a different pouch. So this deck is the Green Wheel Oracle by Danielle Barlow. You can see it comes with a small guidebook which just has very brief messages. And I bought it because I really love the Witch's Wisdom Tarot and I like Danielle Barlow's artwork. So I decided to get this deck to explore as well. It's quite a special deck. It contains cards for each moon of the year. So here we have the quiet moon, and it also has cards for each of the 8 Wheel of the Year celebrations. So here's Ostara, for example, and then the half moon. The guidebook gives you the kind of the dates of the different moons, and also a brief writing about the meaning of these different points in the year. So I have used this deck sometimes as a kind of calendar, pulling out the moon card for the different full moons, and I think they're really beautiful and very interesting, or full of interesting symbolism. So here we have the singing moon, for example, the harvest moon, and so on. And then the other part of this deck is that there are animal cards as well. So I've got these separately from the moon cards. So there are also different animals represented. So here we have deer, robin, salmon, and so on. And there's a brief writing in the guidebook as well to talk about the significance of the animals to us if we pull them in a reading. So I've sometimes drawn an animal alongside the moon to kind of see what's the animal energy of that moon and think about that a little bit. I've also used these cards as inspiration for artwork with my kids because they're quite fun images to try to draw. I think the artwork's really lovely. And it's really grounded in the ecosystem of the animals, often like we can see here with the wren and the toad. So that's the Green Wheel Oracle by Danielle Barlow. She does have a shop on Etsy and an online shop where you can find her artwork. This deck is available there, and also prints from the Witch's Wisdom Tarot also. So at this point, I'm really not sure the order in which I got the decks, so I'm just kind of guessing now. But the next one I'm going to show you is the Wild Unknown Archetypes deck, another deck by Kim Krans. So I have 3 of her decks. I have the Wild Unknown Tarot, the Animal Spirits, and this one, the Archetypes. So this is a round deck. You can see the backs. I don't really like the backs. And here are the cards. So they are representing all different archetypes. Here we have the ocean, the venom, apocalypsis, the desert, the threshold. Now, I'm not actually that keen on the artwork in this deck. It's a collage style deck. I don't have many collage decks. In fact, I think I only have two, this one and the Field Tarot. And for the longest time, I didn't want to get this deck because of the artwork, because it doesn't really draw me at all. But I decided to, out of interest in exploring archetypes further, and I'm very glad I did. The guidebook is really good. It's really well written, and it's full of fascinating insights which bring to life the idea of working with archetypes, which can seem very abstract, but she brings it into life in a very vivid way. So, for example, let's take a look at the Threshold. So the guidebook includes a image in black and white, and then text written about the card, but also added points around the edges, sort of the light and dark aspect, different resources or prompts to explore the concepts further, and some information about how we might interpret the concept of the threshold in our life. So to do with the ideas of initiation, moving into a new phase or a new future. So that is the Wild Unknown Archetype decks by Kim Krans, which is a really wonderful resource if you're interested in exploring archetypes. I've mentioned elsewhere that I've mostly used this deck as inspiration for writing, for poetry, and I have used it especially in combination with the other Wild Unknown decks as well. I don't have the Alchemy deck. It's again a bit of an issue for me with the art. I'm generally not keen on collage style art. I prefer my art to be more like harmonious. I think it's also a reason why I don't like AI art as well, because essentially it's kind of collaged, and I prefer the art to have more continuity and harmony. So that's just a personal preference, and I understand that lots of people love this kind of collage art. It just happens that it's not for me. But I was so interested in the concept of archetypes that I went ahead and got this deck, and I'm very glad I did, because they're very, very interesting ideas, and she approaches them in a very thought-provoking way. So my next two decks are kind of a pair. So these are both mass market decks by Wendy Andrews, the Goddess Dream Oracle and the Goddess Love. I think this is the first one that she published, and this one is more recent, but they're very similar, so I thought I'd put them out together. So this is the backs of the Goddess Dream, and both of the decks come with a little guidebook that contains a message about the card, and this one contains an affirmation, and they're really well written. They're very enjoyable to read. So this is the Goddess Dream, and I'm going to put the Goddess Love alongside it. Both cards contain very beautiful and supportive messages. So here we can see rhythm, tune into the natural rhythm of life, rebirth, let go of the ties that bind. They're very strongly rooted in nature. They represent different aspects of a kind of earth goddess. Here we can see dreaming, be aware of your dreams, and sleep, slow down. I really enjoy the relationships between humans and the more than human world in these decks. So the people are often embracing animals in this very loving way. Transformation, be open to change, and realignment, feel the ebb and flow of life. And we often have these images of flames as well in both decks, where there may be flames held in the hand or above the heads, so representing a kind of life spirit. And like you can see here with self-love, love yourself, and this figure is in harmony with the plants and also with the water and the different species of animals all around her. I think that the artwork is very beautiful, and it speaks to me very strongly. The artist Wendy Andrews, she has a shop on Etsy as well, but these decks are available from her directly, but they're also mass market, so you can get them in other places as well. She is from England, and you can see in the nature in the cards that's very strongly representing a kind of certain idealized British nature in the imagery. I also like the cats. I enjoy seeing the cats represented in this deck, like here, wisdom, remember. This is a nice one too, sanctuary, connect to your inner strength. And we often see in images these kind of spaces opening up to offer shelter. So I've mostly used these decks for single card pulls. I often would draw from them at the end of the day for a kind of message, something to contemplate. And in the guidebook, there are also meditative practices suggested. So that can be a nice way to sort of end the day, connecting with values that matter to me, like imagination, joy, embrace the blessings of life, nurturance, restore your balance. I love this image of a lady sheltering this fox in a snowy landscape. The art is really lovely. So this is the Goddess Dream Oracle and the Goddess Love Oracle, both by Wendy Andrews. So my next oracle deck is this one, Soul Trees Ascension deck. And it was created by Alison Williams Yee. This is an independently published deck. I think I got this one via Etsy as well. These are the lovely backs. This deck is actually edged, this kind of soft matte purple. It's quite nice to the touch. And the artwork is really beautiful. So you can see each of the images of these paintings of trees, slightly abstract paintings of trees, along with a brief message like this one here, come together. And here we have connection. The color palette is beautiful. It's really lovely. Infinite. Empathy and compassion. I love this kind of rich green color for the moon. And then with these sort of pink blossoms or leaves on the trees. Follow through. So the messages are quite simple. I thought when I bought this deck it would be a great kind of all-rounder to finish off a tarot reading, for example, to give a kind of message, to complete a reading, or perhaps to begin a reading as well. So I might pull a card like this, cleanse, and then do a tarot reading to see what does cleanse mean. For me, there are a couple of cards which don't represent trees, but not many. So this one, reflection, is these kind of bubbles. I haven't actually found this deck very easy to use. I don't know why exactly, but it doesn't speak to me very clearly. I sometimes find these kind of messages where it just says something like healing energy a little bit difficult to apply to my life. I don't know why, but these sometimes just feel a little bit random and like just kind of out of nowhere awareness. What does that mean? Like, what do I need to be aware of? What exactly does awareness have to do with the image as well? And I haven't found this deck all that easy to pair up with other decks in my collection. So it hasn't worked out for me quite as I would wish. I am holding on to it because I like the artwork. I like the general energy and feel of the deck. I feel positively towards it, so I have no reason for trying to move it on, as people say. But at the same time, it's not one that I do reach for very often. And that isn't a criticism of the deck. I think it's beautiful. It's just that it doesn't quite fit in my practice currently, or I haven't found a way to use it in my practice currently. I think the art is gorgeous. That dreams image is so beautiful with that little candle in the base of the tree, which is opening up like a tent under the full moon. This image here representing universe with these sort of seed heads radiating light out into the kind of the galaxy. It's very beautiful artwork. And for that reason, the deck has a safe place in my collection. That's the Soul Trees Ascension deck, created by Alison Williams Yee. My next deck is another mass market deck. This is the Priestess of Light Oracle, created by Sandra Ann Taylor and Kimberly Weber. This is another one I bought because I think the artwork is so beautiful. And again, it connects very easily with the kind of values that I want to nurture in my life. So here we see sacred gratitude is the keyword, and then there's a little expansion below, reverence, appreciation, prayer. So it would be very easy to use this deck along with tarot. So it could be to close a reading or perhaps to initiate a reading. So you could pull a card like Sacred Gratitude, and then ask the tarot what you need to, in what ways you need to cultivate gratitude in your life, or where you need to feel more gratitude. This card I love, Healing Earth, the power to give and receive healing. The artwork is very beautiful. It's quite a feminine leaning deck. I feel like it has a very strong kind of yin energy. That's just my kind of interpretation of it. It has a certain kind of softness and beauty and grace about it that I enjoy. It does have a range of different messages. So here we have adjustment, looking back, moving forward. And there's a hint of challenge, I would say, in this card. But at the same time, also hope. You can see the light radiating from this woman's hand. Divine Feminine, magnetic, receptive power. There is also a Divine Masculine card in this deck, but I think that is just one card representing a male representing figure. Here we have tenderness, true love and compassion. It's a really nice image there. And I do think that again, it's another deck in which the relationship with animals is really nice. Here we have duality, many meanings, misunderstanding. That's a very interesting message, and I do find that the write-ups in the guidebook by Sandra Ann Taylor are really illuminating. She writes very well, and she also provides, as well as quite a full message, an affirmation to complete the reading as well, which is very helpful, I think. So they're not just kind of like a superficial concept, but they actually go quite deep in many cases. Some images I'm not sure about, like this one, twin flames, soul partner, eternal connection. I don't know, that's not for me. On the whole, I find that there's something in the images or the messages that I can think about and work with. And like I said, I appreciate the range in the deck. So here we have sensuality, feminine wisdom and passion. And here it is loss, lack, fear and victimization. That's quite an interesting and challenging idea. I think that Kimberly Ann Weber created the artwork, and then it was sort of formed into a deck rather than it being created as a deck. Her art is really beautiful. She's quite a impressive and stunning artist. She works with lots of different materials to get these different effects as well. And she's even presented one of the paintings which is in this deck to the Pope. It's in the Vatican. So she's an interesting artist to check out if you're curious to know more about this deck. And I appreciate on her website how she has spoken about feeling that she wants to bring positive change in the world through representations of beauty to inspire people. So I think that her approach is something which resonates through this deck. So that is the Priestess of Light Oracle by Sandra Ann Taylor and Kimberly Weber. Next, I'm going to briefly mention this deck, as it were, the wild cards created by Jackie Morris. I've mentioned this in a few different videos as being kind of part of my Oracle collection, so I'm including it here for the sake of completeness, even though it isn't really an Oracle deck at all. It's a collection of 100 postcards of Jackie Morris's beautiful artwork. So I do have several of Jackie Morris's books, as well as the Lost Words and the Lost Spells, which she created with Robert McFarlane, and the kind of source of many of the images in this collection. You can see their paintings of different animals and plants, mostly from, or I think entirely from, the British Isles, because it was part of a project that she and Robert McFarlane created to try to connect children more strongly with the ecosystems and bring back that sense of connection with nature that they felt was kind of disappearing. So here you can see the kingfishers, and then she also has artworks in which the animals or plants have disappeared. And so it's a kind of exploration of presence and loss in our ecosystems. The artwork is stunning. I love these images which use gold as well to really kind of show the power of these animals. And it's just a really impressive collection of artwork that I love to kind of spend time with and appreciate. And I am hoping in the winter months to find a way to integrate it into my practice as well. So now we're into decks which I got this year. I have actually moved on a few decks from my collection, so I gave away a couple of Oracle decks and I've put aside a couple more to give away, so I'm not showing them here. So it is possible that a couple of decks I've shown in previous videos are not appearing here, and that's why, because I've either given them away or will do so. So a deck which is definitely staying in my collection is the Citadel, a fantasy oracle by Fez Inkwright. I've talked about this one a few times on my channel because I've got a couple of videos showing how I use this deck to create stories alongside other decks, tarot decks. This one is a really unusual one in my collection because it's not especially nature-based. So this one is based on a kind of fantasy world, and it's a kind of archetypes deck. You can see that there is a keyword. So here we have the thief and then an expansion, seizing the moment, selfishness. So you could use this as an oracle deck in the way that the other decks work, as a support for a tarot reading, or just as an idea, a prompt, as a single card reading. I haven't done that. I haven't used it as a sort of direct reader. I've used it to create stories. So if you're interested in how I've done that, then I've got a couple of videos on my channel about it, which I'll link below. One using this in combination with the Pagan Otherworlds, and one using it in combination with Tarot of the Abyss. And I think it's a really well produced deck. Visually it's really nice, like it has these kind of accents of gold, and you can see it has this unusual shape as well. And the artwork is very striking. As I've mentioned before, there's a nice range of different characters in the deck, and the write-up in the guidebook is really interesting as well. Oh, it's upside down, sorry, there. It kind of takes you into the world. It's sort of a little bit of storytelling in there, and it also gives you an interpretation that you could bring into your own life as well, if you choose. The guidebook, the deck is explicitly inspired by fantasy literature, so books such as Tolkien's Lord of the Rings books, Game of Thrones, and also by tabletop gaming like Dungeons and Dragons. So if you're interested in those, then check out the walkthroughs which are online of this deck. Lots of people have spoken about it, and I'm glad it's got so much attention because I think it's a really nice deck, and I'm glad that I discovered it in that way thanks to the walkthrough on Danny Mystic's channel. So that is the Citadel, a fantasy oracle, which is published by Liminal 11. There is a special edition. I don't have that. I have the standard mass market edition. Just two more decks left in the collection to show you now. This is Terra, an oracle deck that was created by Lucas Keown and Lindsay Cummins. I bought this off Etsy. It is an independent deck. And this is an animal deck. So these are the backs. And here we can see the animals. They are all represented with these kind of black and white pen drawings. You have the animal's name. Here we have the manatee and a keyword as well. There are 100 cards in this deck, so there's a really nice range of animals represented. Here we have the orb weaver, the Bengal, the vulture, the Emperor, the Fennec Fox, and each one is associated with a different keyword. And there are really nice write-ups in the guidebook which you can get to accompany the deck. So this, sometimes I think it's sold, you can also buy it separately without the guidebook. I felt like the guidebook would help me, and I'm really glad I did get it, because the write-ups are very well thought out and written, and it includes information, a little bit of information about the animal in their ecosystem as well, which I think is interesting. I actually got this one even though I already have the animal spirit, because I feel like these animals are somehow more grounded. They feel to me like representations of the animals themselves as we might meet them in the world. Although the drawings are very simple, we don't have like they're not within a landscape. I feel like they attempt to show the animal like we might see it in nature, and that's something which I really like. I find the animals to be very connected with the earth energies, and for me very grounding. I have a few ways in which I've used this deck, and I am planning to make a video in the future about this deck and also animals in general in tarot and oracle, and what they mean to me and how they are represented in different ways. So if you're interested in seeing that, please do remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, as that'll be out in the future at some point. So that is Terra, an oracle deck, which you can find on Etsy. It's independently published if you're interested in it. And now my last oracle deck in the collection is this one, Sea Soul Journeys, Oracle Cards, created by Pippa Best. Connect with the healing power of the ocean. This is a photography deck, and I'm thinking back, trying to think if I have any other photography decks. I think this might be the only one. So this is one of the beautiful backs, but it has different backs because these cards are in different groups. They have messages which the creator has arranged into different groups to take you through a journey connecting with the healing power of the ocean. And I think she's done an amazing job. They are really beautiful and wonderful messages. So here you can see resilient, may your soul weather the storms. So each card has a keyword, and then it has a kind of blessing. May your soul weather the storms. Here we have depth. May you immerse and go deeper. Play. May you seek out fun and connection. Free. May your soul sing freely. Beauty. May you perceive nature's artistry afresh. They're very well written. I've spoken before when in one of my videos where I first got this in, I think, about how they feel to me like the meditation that you do for metta meditation, loving compassion, when you wish well upon yourself and upon others with phrases like, may you be happy, may you be healthy and strong, may you have ease and well-being, and so forth, when you're thinking about a loved one or thinking about a wider inclusion of people. So I feel when I read this deck that it's like receiving loving kindness messages from the sea, and it's wonderful. I personally feel very connected with the sea. I enjoy swimming in the sea. It's something I enjoy to do with my children as well, to visit the sea and enjoy the beautiful sounds and sensations that you have at the beach and in the water. So this deck I think is a really great way of connecting with that energy when you can't go to the sea, for example. You can see that mine is bowed. Actually, I didn't show this with all of the decks, but I think pretty much all of my decks probably are bowed just because I live in such a hot climate, and I have taken this one to the sea, so it has been exposed to some rough conditions. So this is the Sea Soul Journeys Oracle Cards by Pippa Best. I think it has really well thought out images and messages, It's a mass market deck, and it's the last deck I have to show you in my collection. So thank you so much for sharing your time with me. I hope you've enjoyed this little journey through my oracle decks. If there's anyone that you'd like to see more of or like to know more about how I use them, please do leave me a comment, let me know which one you'd like to know more about. And I'll also leave a few links down below to other videos in which I've spoken about these decks in a little bit more detail. So thank you again for sharing your time with me, and I wish you well wherever you are and hope to see you again soon.